Interestingly, the subaltern school also, if you recall, had been very critical of Indian nationalism and the Congress, albeit on different lines. In the subaltern story, the national movement and its history were a history from above, in which the players were the elites and they were the ones who were hegemonic in society. They were the ones who decided the fate of the subaltern classes. And here also, the Congress is singled out as the elite party, and it is the one who, not just elite in class terms, but the Congress is also singled out for being elite on caste lines. If we are told that they represent the interests of caste Hindus alone. Strangely, Perry Anderson allows the British government and then further the imperialist school to take the credit for the unity of the Indian subcontinent. He says, shockingly, that the idea of India was a European, not a local invention. And he says that the word India did not exist in any indigenous language. And he gives credit to the British for bringing unity to India. And from there, he takes it forward saying that, well, obviously, then the British don't want partition. Why don't they want partition? Because if they had partition, if they pushed for partition, then they would be destroying unity. And unity was their best achievement in India. Very curious argument, as you can see. In your books in school, you might have heard the word Angrezi Raj ki barkate, the blessings of British government. So Anderson is accepting this claim by the British of uniting India, that this was one of their barkate, one of their blessings. From here, he goes on to call the Congress a Hindu Congress. And that is where he locates the process which leads to partition. That because the Congress has a Hindu vision, therefore we have partition. Now, if we take very briefly a look at the last 1 year of colonial rule, and particularly the cabinet mission, Perry Anderson shows up the Congress as being the main obstacle in the path of unity. And the Muslim League is presented as being for unity. What does it remind you of? Aisha Jalal, right? So, very close to the imperialist school. Normally, there is one statement which Nehru had made, which is always picked up by these people. And sure enough, this statement is there. Nehru had said, and this was in July 1946, he said, "We are not bound by a single thing except that we have decided to go into the Constituent Assembly." We don't notice that just about a month earlier, Gandhi had said the same thing in an editorial in his newspaper Harijan. He said, Constituent Assembly will decide its own procedure. The mission plan was not binding. There's no difference between the two. But it is Nehru who is picked up for sabotaging the cabinet mission plan, because that is how the argument makes sense in the way that it is embroidered by Anderson and company. What Nehru and Gandhi said was not very different, friends, from what the Muslim League had said. I'll quote just one sentence to you. The Muslim League said, and I'm quoting their resolution, they said, "We accept the cabinet mission plan quote, inasmuch as the basis and foundation of Pakistan are inherent in the mission plan by virtue of the compulsory grouping of the six Muslim provinces. Not different. They are going by their interpretation. That is, compulsory grouping is what gives us Pakistan, therefore we accept it. Who was the culprit here? The culprit, friends, here was the British. The three men who came out in the cabinet mission, the three ministers, who gave duplicitous assurances to both sides. They would tell the Congress that, look, don't worry, we want a united India. Grouping of provinces is not compulsory. Just hang on for a while. The Muslim League, in turn, was told, its leaders were told that, look, grouping of provinces is compulsory. And you can build Pakistan on this grouping of provinces. So just stay on, hang on with us. So the ambiguity was, or rather duplicity was there in the assurances of these ministers. That was where the responsibility for the breakdown of the cabinet mission lay. An argument, or rather a myth, which many of you will find very interesting because you must have come across it, is very often we are told that in the last 2-3 days of his life, Gandhi, was very unhappy with the Congress leaders, with his disciples, and in fact, he asked for the Congress to be dissolved. He wanted a Lok Seva Sangh. Even Amit Shah, a year or two ago, made this statement, calling Gandhi a Chatur Banya because of this very smart move of his. Now, this is not just Anderson. Very eminent political scientists, the Rudolphs, have written this. Very eminent commentators, Raj Mohan Gandhi, the grandson of Mahatma Gandhi, has also written this, that Gandhi wrote a constitution. It was a last will and testament of his. It was the last thing he wrote, and that he wanted the Congress to be dissolved. I'm just going to take a couple of minutes from you for this very important matter, which comes across in this historical writings on independence and partition. Take a look at the documents. Take a look at the Harijan. Take a look at the collected works of Mahatma Gandhi. Friends, they are all available online, gandhiserve.org. Go to 27th January 1948, 3 days before Gandhiji was assassinated, and Gandhi wrote there, the Congress has outlived its use. It should be disbanded and it would flower into a Lok Sevak Sangh. This note, the 27th Jan note, appears after his death in his newspaper Harijan with a different title. And what is that title? The title is, yes, you're right, his last will and testament. This phrase, last will and testament, was added by Kaka Kalelkar and other associates. Because Gandhi had died by then, this note assumed a greater significance than Gandhi had intended. Gandhi, friends, please note, did not sit down to write a last will and testament. He was only writing a note on a possible draft constitution. In fact, he had been writing notes on a possible constitution of the party for the future since 1946, since the time he was in Noakhali. Also, do note what was published in the Harijan on the same day, that is 2nd February 1948, also written by Gandhi. Gandhi said, Indian National Congress, which is the oldest national political organization and which has, after many battles, fought her non-violent way to freedom, cannot be allowed to die. It can only die with the nation. So, what are we getting from here? We are getting from here the impression that Gandhi's views on the subject of the Congress are very much more nuanced. He was not talking about the final dissolution of the Congress. He was toying with the idea of its being disbanded and of an organization, Lok Sevak Sangh, coming up. But the Congress was not going anywhere. This was the social and the economic tasks which had to be taken up. Maybe there were two organizations which were needed for that. In the end, then, for friends, let me ask you a question. What is the kind of history of independence and partition that you would like to see written? If you ask me, I would like to see the history of those who stood out. That means those people who helped somebody, who came to the rescue of others, who gave people a shoulder to lean on, people who died giving their lives to protect people of the other community. They could be Mahavir Tyagi, congressman from Dehradun. It could be Gandhi ji, who was a Mountbatten called him a one-man boundary force. Riots stopped in Calcutta when Gandhi went and stayed there and then went on fast. And there are many other stories. We also need a story which overcomes the divide between high politics and the history of subalterns. History from above, history from below. These binaries we need to bridge. We need to bring them together. Some years ago, the possibility of writing a different type of history had opened up when some of us had been involved in writing, putting together the documents on the freedom struggle in what was called the Towards Freedom series. And here it was, apart from the freedom struggle and apart from partition, we had fascinating themes like, for example, the aspirations of the statespeoples, the workers and peasants struggles, the caste issues, untouchability, Devdasi rights, boundaries, foreign relations, a host of issues which were taken up. We are today in India on the threshold of celebrating the 75th anniversary of India's freedom. And I think we can now move beyond independence and partition to a new perspective, a perspective which is a perspective of transition, a perspective which will capture the churning, जिसे हिंदी में हम मंथन कहते हैं, the churning which went on in when the colonial society was, it gave way and a new independent society, economy, polity was born, new structures, new institutions. It is this paradigm of transition in which issues of citizenship, aspirations for democracy, inclusion and discrimination, identity, gender, caste, language, this will help us to move away from a perspective of transfer of power and recognize the truly revolutionary transformation which was marked by 15th August 1947. Thank you so much for your patience and thank you so much for listening to me. Thank you.